Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Work 3.5 podcast. This is the podcast where we jam to the latest beat in the decentralized world and chat with brilliant minds in the Web3 industry. Today on the show, we've got not one, but two innovative minds joining us from DualMint, a startup on the cutting edge of tokenizing and certifying reward assets into NFTs, transparently and securely held on the blockchain. First, we have Bernard, entrepreneur and co-founder serving as CEO. Bernard brings a diverse background spanning traditional finance and banking with an eye toward merging physical and digital worlds. Also with us is Bill, the technologist acting as DualMint co-founder and CTO. As a seasoned crypto trader and experienced programmer, Bill enables much of the technological magic around asset certification and transaction integrity, powering DualMint's offerings. Together, they blend blockchain expertise with real-world business savvy to deliver a recipe that certifies, tracks, and verifies ownership histories for tangible goods. On the show today, we hear insider secrets behind their processes and the legacy stories they are preserving forever on-chain. So without further ado, let's get insights directly from the source on DualMint. Hi, Bernard and Bill. It's so great to have you both on the show.
Hi, Olabisi. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
All right, great. So how are things going over at DualMint?
Well, it's really exciting at the moment because we've started to expand a lot of our outreach to our partners, and we're now seeing what the traditional world is really lacking. A lot of what we've been trying to do is figure out how our basic traditional businesses can actually enter into the Web3 space. And we've been looking at that over the last year and a half. And we've now come to a stage where we're actually now branching out and launching this to market towards the Web3 community. And obviously it's been a struggle to educate a lot of the traditional businesses, traditional partners that are in the traditional world, and make them understand that the significance and the development of Web3. Obviously, we've had certain bad connotations, such as the collapses of crypto businesses, and also the NFT. How would you say the NFT world looking at it quite unfavorably because people were, I guess, in some ways scammed, or they lost a lot of money because they were buying into something that didn't actually have any intrinsic value, but was much more of a speculation. So we look at it quite favorably because, like the dot-com era in early 2000, when a lot of the world was looking at just going in and favoring tech in some way, and blindly, you can say, you're now seeing that the world is going to eliminate a lot of the bad garbage, and the ones that actually have application and usage in the future will be the ones that prevail. And we think that DualMint is at the forefront of bringing traditional businesses with tangible assets, tangible services, and providing it to the to the Web3 space. So we're quite excited. We're really looking forward to how the next year and going forward is gonna develop for DualMint.
Well, I'm looking forward to it as well. Thanks for answering the question in details and keeping us up to date on how things are going over at DualMint. So I went through the startup's white paper, and I also went through the website content, and I got to understand that DualMint aims to help established businesses, what we call Web2 business, apply the technology in Web3 to improve the user experience from a transactional to a more meaningful one. So I think my next question will now be, could you explain the core principles behind DualMint's model and what originally inspired the idea?
Okay, so a lot of the, I guess, the NFT space and the crypto space, and coming from a banking background, I mean, obviously, I also don't really trust it that much because there wasn't any intrinsic value behind a lot of the things. And NFT, when they look at it, a lot of people who were looking at it just purely as JPEGs, and a form of speculation. But actually, from what DualMint is looking at it from, is really the blockchain technology. And Bill will go through this in more detail about how we're incorporating like dual provenance, actually merging, different legal documentation and the blockchain behind it, so that the NFTs, or the Web3 space can have or acquire certain membership programs through the NFT as a source of ownership, and there is real ownership of certain tangible and intangible, whether it's assets, services, or products. And this was really what inspired us, and how it evolved, because we had, I guess, the COVID situation where it disrupted a lot of the supply chain. You weren't able to actually physically, acquire or get products and services. But through this blockchain and NFT process, you can actually have ownership of tangible assets and services, without actually having physical delivery. And then, for example, say if you were to buy a whiskey, a real bottle of whiskey through an NFT, you don't actually need to have the physical bottle with you, but you can actually start trading it on the platform. And that would be one of the things. But, obviously the next phase of development, and I'll go through that at a later stage, is how we can then bring certain partners, different businesses that offer different services to the spectrum of DualMint.
All right. Awesome.
Can I augment that a little bit?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I just want to touch a little bit about like the initial idea behind DualMint and actually how it came about, right? So, and we all know, I'm sure everybody who's listening to the podcast are all, very well versed in the Web3 and blockchain technology. Blockchain is great for acting as a immutable ledger. So you can basically record all these information that cannot be changed. That's all great and such, right? But there's an issue, right? The issue is, you can record the ownership and whatever information on the blockchain, but it doesn't really translate into the real world, right? So whether or not people believe it or trust this thing is you can only look at the record on the blockchain, but there is no legal fallback in the real world. So when we came up with DualMint, one of the biggest idea is how do we solve that problem? So we came up with the concept of the dual provenance. So what the dual provenance means is that it allows us to do a two-way linkage between the digital provenance, whatever is written on the blockchain, with a physical provenance, something in the real world that can be, legally binding. And we do it through, ecosystem technology and ecosystem partnership, which is another thing that is very different approach to, handling real asset that is very different than a lot of actually most of the solution. We actually haven't seen anything like our solution out there. Many solutions, basically all they do is take a photo. If they were to do real asset, they're taking a photo of the asset and putting it on, maybe a marketplace that they build. So it's kind of like, a Web3 Amazon, right? But the problem is when you're dealing with Web3 real world assets, it's no longer just taking a photo. There are a lot of other things that goes into servicing like real world assets. For example, logistics may be one of them, insurance may be another, anti-counterfeiting, um, authentication, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have from day one started building this project with best of breed ecosystem partners to provide solutions in these different areas to service with the thought to service these real world assets correctly. In addition to solving the trust issue with the real world provenance. So that was what I kind of want to add to what Bernard's answer was.
All right, great. Just like you said, I haven't seen anything like what DualMint is doing at the moment also. And I think what you guys are doing is really important and great for the ecosystem. So I want to talk about misconceptions, right? So what common misconceptions do you find consumers have about assets tokenization?
A lot of people look at NFTs with a bad connotation. Asset tokenization, they're always thinking that, by issuing coins based on a particular, photo or a JPEG or, just anything is kind of just a scam. There's no real ownership. And as Bill said earlier, there is in the Web3 space, there isn't anything that has what DualMint provides, which is like solutions for the legal provenance, the certification. There's no insurance, there's no logistics. How do they transfer, or how do they keep custody of all these particular products? There is no service provider, service that helps encumber the whole idea of asset transfer. This is one of the major issues. Though I think with asset tokenization, it's easy to mint a NFT, but actually have all the solutions behind it. As you said, Olabisi, I don't think there's any company that actually does it properly, or has gone to the lengths as what DualMint has to really look for all the solutions before coming out with our platform.
Question to that. I would like to touch on the point of yielding on tokenized assets. So why do you see this as an advantage for emerging countries like Nigeria, or places like Indonesia, the Philippines in Asia, or Argentina, Colombia, and Venezuela in Latin American countries?
So this has come out, and it's quite interesting. If you look at how the first world countries are, it has all the access to good financial products. And even, let's say, for example, third world countries don't really have as much access to the financial products as first world country does. And even in the first world countries, for example, say, if I was a millionaire and I could invest $10 million, I would have access to all the top financial products in the world. I could buy bonds, I could buy a lot of things that are high yielding, and I would have access. Even going to a bank, the bank would entertain me if I was going to put in as a deposit $1 million. But if I only had 5,000 in my bank, I wouldn't have access to much. I wouldn't be able to put, I could put my money into a savings account, but that would not compare remotely to someone that's going to put in $1 million. Now, when we looked at this, we were looking at how would we be able to give the third world countries much more of an access to better financial products, high yielding products, which wouldn't require such a large capital. or wouldn't require a large deposit. And this was really kind of a functionality of where we then evolved into. And it was lucky because we have access to, and we know a lot of different ventures and partners, which, at one stage they require funding and they can go through the conventional, conventional systems of raising capital. But it would also, from their point of view, it would be very problematic as well. So we kind of merged, and you've probably heard of such enterprises as crowdfunding and things like that, which gives access to lower bite-size investments, or people that put money in for services and products in the future. But if these particular partners require smaller investors to come in, which can then create higher yielding opportunities. So even for a $300 US dollar investment, or a partnership membership program, and they still get a reasonable yield, of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. This would actually be quite, how would you say, favorable for a lot of people that have limited funds, but actually gain access to first world projects, and be part of it as a member. And this is where we're evolving and heading towards, and hopefully we can bring first world projects to benefit third world countries.
So I like that, especially on the part of funding, because that is the major issue that third world countries face when it comes to the issue of raising funding for projects, for assets, and whatnot. It can be quite stressful if I could put it like that. Yeah, it's quite stressful.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is also building on, what emerging markets, why emerging markets have one of the highest adoption rate on Web3 and cryptocurrency, right? Because a lot of the places, they may be politically unstable. They might have the currency might be also not very stable. And ease of getting funds transferred and whatnot, all that beautiful stuff that everybody in emerging market loves, with that. So we're kind of like building on that story. And we also want to at some point do kind of like a two-way traffic, right? And so first is bringing first world projects, making it available to emerging markets, and hopefully when we get more well known, like you said, Olabisi, there might be very interesting projects that might be looking for funding from emerging markets, and we can potentially bring those back into the first world countries to tap into some of those capital.
I think mainstream adoption and purchasing power in emerging markets is also a major problem.
I think there might be, maybe, but I'm sure. Well, we try to price the projects per project at a much lower price point. That's why I think, as Bernard pointed out, like you don't need to be a high net worth individual with millions of dollars to have access to products, right? So we're trying to make some of these interesting products more available to at a much lower price point to a higher population.
Okay, awesome. So my next question is going to be more practical. Can you walk us through a basic example of how tokenizing watches could transform the buying experience compared to traditional e-commerce, and how does it benefit both businesses and consumers?
Yeah, so we actually try to make the system as the buying experience as much like a Web2 experience as possible, because we, obviously, if you are already very comfortable with, with digital wallets and have been doing transactions for a while, it's very natural for you to be able to, onboard, buying cryptocurrency and then buying the NFT off of our platform. But, we also want to cater to people who might not be as tech savvy, or, people who might be a little more, might have been, a little more conservative and have only been exposed to the Web2 world like Amazon, right? So, we have put in a lot of thought and working with partners. You can basically just connect to our system with any of your social logins without even having a digital wallet. If you don't have one, the system actually automatically creates one for you. You can, do a credit card one-click buy. All the complexity is hidden behind, so you can buy an NFT without even having owned any cryptocurrency, even though the underlying transactions are on Web3.
I can add on to what Bill has said, because we've got a very interesting project which we're launching very shortly, and they've actually, as a business, they've questioned why they actually need to adopt, the NFT or the Web3 approach. So one of the projects is Diamond Sake, which is a Japanese sake alcohol distillery. And when we approached them, we kind of highlighted it would be really great to partner with them to collaborate and create, let's say, for example, 2,000 limited edition sakes for the NFT owners or the members. And one of the questions was, why do they need to do this? Because they're already selling their, their sake. And I said to them, yes, you are. You have your own, network, your own client base, and your own following. But through this process, you're now reaching a new dimension or a new demographic of people. These are the crypto savvy people. This is the Web3 space, and people that buy this not only have the access to the NFTs, but they also have access to your limited editions. And you're actually promoting your business to a new demographic, and it won't eliminate your own customer base, because they will either follow you and then, be more educated into the Web3 space, but they will also start to look at the company as being much more of a at the forefront of technology. And it benefits them much more, because if the NFTs on these limited editions start to trade higher, their popularity and their, the valuation of Diamond will actually go up in value as well. Because, for example's sake, if the NFT owners, acquire this and they later resell it onto the secondary market, and let's say it was $50 when they purchased the NFT, and now that bottle of sake is now worth $100 because it's been auctioned at Sotheby's or somewhere else. Then the next lot of limited edition sake will be actually much higher. Their branding will then transpire into the valuation of their company. People will then start looking at their sake in a different light. So they're actually garnering much more of a growth for their brand and also for their company. And once they kind of looked at it in that particular perspective, then they were much more interested, because they didn't really gather or fathom the potential of marketing to a different demographic of individuals. And obviously they will look at, oh, but we're not actually selling it, and, they're not delivering it. And I said, you don't actually need to deliver it, because if some of the people are, for example, in Nigeria or Venezuela, they may not take possession of the sake physically. They leave it on the platform, and they just, they buy it. It goes up in price. They sell it, and it trades on its own until they actually take on delivery or redeem the particular sake from any distribution point, like any Amazon or any Alibaba platform where they take possession of it. So it doesn't change anything. It's just a new way of marketing and a new way of creating brand awareness. So that actually with the attraction to a lot of these businesses now, and this is what I've been telling them, that you have to look at how you transform your business identity, how you transform your business delivery of your products and services to multiple channels of demographics.
I think it's really, really interesting because it's unique also, because I think I haven't seen anyone in Web3 doing something as unique as this before. Wow. So let's transition a level deeper. Can you take us through what the DualMint blockchain certification process looks like at a basic technical level? Because my audience, they've been following up the conversation from the start, and now they're probably curious now, wondering that, okay, if I want to get certified on DualMint, what does the process looks like, and how exactly does the proof of provenance work, and how does it benefit me as a business owner or as a user?
So basically DualMint works with both tangible and intangible products. So tangible products is, a physical item, like a bottle of whiskey or like a piece of art, that might have some kind of certificate associated with it. And basically, in order for the item to be listed on DualMint, the owner of the item needs to basically work with DualMint throughout the process, maybe to even check it into one of our bonded warehouse, because that way we can basically provide, guarantee that the item actually exists. And then we have ecosystem partners that does, authentication and appraisals and whatnot. We also have ecosystem partners that provides anti-counterfeiting type technology. In basically, the way they do it is through a technology called CQR code, that you basically stick it onto the item, and then once that's done, we will basically help the customer mint the item, and then will be placed on our platform. Now, in terms of intangible projects, this is also, we would work with the project owner to define what it means when they offer this type of project. So, for example, if we're talking about, let's say, the diamond sake example, what does it mean if you own an NFT on the diamond sake? It might mean, every year you get a limited edition of a bottle of sake. It may mean that you get to visit the distillery and get some, sake tasting experience, for example. May also mean that, you get some kind of, like community holder, like appreciation reward from Daimon periodically. So we would work with the company to define what it means. We put that into the real world, what we call the real world provenance, leveraging our workflow technology through one of our ecosystem partner. That gets generated and electronically signed, and then imported onto the blockchain as the metadata, with the NFT. And then once the NFT is minted, we also take the blockchain specific information and put those back into the real life provenance as well. So the dual provenance, that's kind of how it works at a very high level, that allows us to link the real world provenance with the blockchain provenance.
Right, awesome. So, as a follow-up question to that, can you give examples of some of the most unique or impactful real-world assets you've already seen tokenized with DualMint so far?
Yeah, we've actually got a few, and we're actually relisting some of them as we're relaunching the whole platform. For example's sake, we've got some of the rarest whiskeys available. There's one that we are partnering with Angel Share Whiskey Company that has suddenly had an access to one of the rarest casks of Glenfiddich whiskey in the world. From what we know, and we're checking on the provenance and everything like that, I think this is one of the only casks that have been acquired by this whiskey company and bottled independently, because Glenfiddich, if you know whiskey, in Glenfiddich distillery in Scotland, never allow or never sell their casks of whiskey, like, let's say, for example, Macallan or Bowmore. So it's kind of one of the rarest finds in the world, and it's been quite interesting. I think they're in the process of developing the whole story so that they relist it and show the rarity of it. Another project on the whiskey side as well, which is quite interesting, is there's going to be a cask whiskey storage facility, which will be looking at garnering many members or NFT owners, which will have the access to acquire a one storage lot within the facility. So it's kind of like a mini storage. So the business is offering kind of like NFT owners to acquire space number 1 or space number 99 or space number 2000, and each space gets rented out to cask owners, which store their casks for durations of 3 years to 10 years usually, and from that they acquire, or they have the rights to the revenues and the profit sharing from the storage lots. So imagine you have a storage facility, and it's all broken down into various lots. Then each NFT owner would have the access or the acquisition of a space, which then gets rented out, and the NFT owners will be then getting a yield from, or a return from the revenues that are generated from that space.
Right, great. So let's move to trust and safety measures. What core guidelines or partnerships give confidence that data and standards are protected throughout?
Well, we as a technology company, it's definitely very sensitive to, sensitive data, personal data. I mean, I think everybody who is in the Web3 world believes that. We a lot of these projects, we're not. First of all, we're not a custodian of any personal data. So when people are connecting, we won't capture any personal data. When people are buying, we don't capture any you know any credit card information. We also our contracts are also audited by one of the largest auditing company around, Hacken, and we have scored 9.3 out of 10, which is a very high score. Typically, companies just strive to basically get a 6 or 7, and then they basically call it a day. We went back and forth multiple times to make sure we get a really high score, making sure our contract is well developed, to sort of, obviously, hacking, it is a big problem. Nobody can be 100% sure. Things can happen to our platform, but we do a lot of we do pay a lot of attention to making sure we do our best to mitigate any of these risks.
Well, still on mitigating risk, what fraud prevention measures ensure the goods on the platform match chain records and minimize disputes?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, one of our ecosystem partner has technology called CQR technology, which is actually passport grade. When I say passport grade, it means like the technology is being used by passports in different countries to identify the individuals. So as you can imagine, if some of these countries are trusting this type of technology, it's definitely a very leading edge, and we're basically using the same type of technology to ensure that the product, once you have that tagged, is the product that has been checked into the DualMint ecosystem. We also work with third party logistics company and anti-counterfeiting company, and companies that does appraisal, that basically allows them, or they basically give their opinion on whether or not a particular item is fake or real. So instead of doing it in house, we basically trust one of some of these larger ecosystem partners that does this day in and day out and have a lot of experience doing this over many years.
So let's talk about scaling globally, because I know the platform has plans of scaling globally, and should I say take over the world, if I can put it like that. So as you scale globally, how do collaborations with other organizations assist with your operating abilities and expanding mainstream consumer adoption over time?
So looking at it from a global perspective, I think Web3 really is globalization. We're not, we're not confound, or we're not, we're not confined by any borders. Delivery of services and ownership of NFTs and things are not confined by any countries or by any jurisdictions. We are able to deliver all the first, let's say, developed country projects and products and services to emerging markets. The good thing is, when we look at it, we're not confined by any space, and people, whether they're in Nigeria or Venezuela, can be interacting with people in Asia, and vice versa. So that's how we see DualMint as the platform that can bring the world together. You can actually be transacting or communicating with anybody across the world through this particular platform, by transacting on the products and services or the NFTs. So, globally, I now don't see that there is any confinement of jurisdiction or borders. This is how we view it. As DualMint.
Yeah, and tactically, we would, obviously work with people like you, who can help us get the word out, hopefully, and we start building our community around, different little communities around, different interests in maybe some of the projects that we're offering, or some of the assets that we're tokenizing, and hopefully, through organic or word of mouth growth, we can, we can really grow the awareness around what we're trying to do.
Awesome. So, taking a big picture view, if we were to imagine consumer e-commerce transaction in 10 years from now, fully functioning in Web3 and the metaverse, what does that frictionless future experience look like for both businesses and shoppers?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think, after the whole COVID incident, globally, supply chains and everything and travel access has been disrupted. I think all businesses really need to look at is how the impact and the change of consumer sentiment, how people interact, and how the consumers and the businesses have changed. The whole delivery mechanism is very different. If you have a look, online shopping is now much bigger than actual physical shopping. There is still quite a lot of people that go to shops to look at things, but when they actually pull the trigger and buy, it's probably something that's online. They look at it in terms of their size or the color or the fabric, and then they actually prefer to trade online versus offline. Now, the difference, and I guess going forward, how Web3 is going to look at it is they're not going to be looking at just going on to Web3 and just buying something without actually having any tangible, intangible value. And they're certainly not going to just trust it without having any legal documentation or purchase agreement, contracts and everything, and security behind it. So that's why we think DualMint is already, really at the forefront of delivering this. We're probably, as you said, there's nothing in the Web3 space similar to what we're doing. And, we look at ourselves as being pioneers of delivering what we believe is going to be the future of transactions, something that even if you acquire something on the DualMint platform, at least you're going to have something of intrinsic value. You're going to have legal provenance. There's going to be security. There's going to be the logistics behind it. And within the ecosystem, even if you don't like it and you've bought it, you can still, you can still have resale value, or you can actually still trade it to someone that may find greater value in it. And that would be the enjoyment of, you can look at it in that perspective where I've bought a pair of shoes now. I haven't worn them, but, I take it to a secondhand store. But in this particular process of DualMint, even though you've bought it, I look at it and I'll put it onto my, onto my own space for people to see that I have it. I can then later trade it, and earn rewards or earn back revenues from it. So, this is the exciting part of, the future of consumerism.
I'm looking forward to the future. What do the next 12 months look like as immediate milestones for the DualMint team? And what are you guys focused on achieving in both the short and long-term roadmap?
Okay, well, we've been very lucky. We've, obviously in the last few months, we've been able to raise capital from our venture capital partner. And now we're pretty much globalizing or expanding our our marketing outreach. But within the next 12 months, what we see ourselves is really developing the community within DualMint. We want to access as many communities and Web3 users as possible so that we can, how do you say, promote and deliver all the special items, projects, or yielding projects or things that are going to be of interest to the emerging markets. At the same time, we've already developed and have access to a lot of partners and businesses which are very interested in what we're doing. But at the same time, they're probably gun shy. But there are, we've already got a lot of, a good 10 to 15 projects that we're going to be launching within the next 2 months to 3 months, and then deliver it to the community as we're building out. A lot of projects previously, when they start, they would probably look at an ICO or a tokenization. We've actually gone backwards. We want to make sure that our DualMint tokens, dual tokens, are going to be utility based. So within the next 12 months, what we plan to do is, create tokens so that we create a unique ecosystem where NFT owners, community, they have access to the dual tokens through what we're going to be doing in the first 3 months, which is going to be a giveaway. So for people that are listening to the podcast, stay tuned to DualMint, because we're going to be launching a mass giveaway of dual tokens, which you can then use for various product services as a cash rebate, and be part of the community so that you have access to these particular brands, products, services, and businesses. And then after that, we'll then look at reestablishing kind of like a community buy-in of tokens, which would then be like, for the community members, they'll have access to a discounted security or utility token for further access and purchases. And after that, we'll be looking at kind of continuing to build the bridge between the Web 2 and Web 3 space, traditional businesses, to further enhance, I guess, the variety and categories of products and services to the community. Obviously, we'll then look at private investments into the tokenization, and then by probably about 9 months time, we're going to be launching the dual tokens, hopefully onto certain platforms like Binance or crypto exchanges, so that the dual tokens from a utility point of view will then become something of greater value, and people that have access, or the community that had first access of it, hopefully will benefit from the overall launch of the tokenization of the dual tokens. So that's what we are looking at for the immediate 1 year horizon.
Oh, sounds like a plan. And I'm sure my audience would love to be part of it too, because they also love to benefit from something so innovative and unique, like what you guys are doing over at DualMint. So let's come back from the future and bring it back to the present. For a business ready to get started showcasing inventory on DualMint, can you walk us through what the process looks like for a business to tokenize their inventory?
Yeah, for businesses who would like to work with DualMint, definitely, for now, we're still kind of perfecting the whole process. So it's more of a hand-holding process for now. So people who are listening, please reach out to us. We will be very happy to work with you on basically looking at how we can help you put your projects or products onto DualMint platform.
Right. So, for individual consumers that are curious about showcasing their assets on DualMint, how can they get started? What resources exist for consumers to explore and understand your platform?
Yeah, that's actually a bit easier. Our testnet is live, so if you go to the DualMint website, www.dualmint.com, you'll be able to access our testnet. You can then go in and play around with the testnet. We also have what we call a personal gallery, and the personal gallery is again, free to play with. That allows people to maybe want to show off their personal assets, something that may be near and dear to them, and they can share with the on different social platforms and whatnot. We'll probably also do some competition and marketing campaigns around that, where we also give away the dual tokens. People can showcase their assets, their inventory, without having to, putting it on sale on the platform. But if they do want to do that, they can also, contact us, and we'll be able to, more than happy to help them put their assets onto the DualMint platform.
All right. I'll also be including website and social media accounts in the episode description. So if you're listening to this, you can check them out, and also stay tuned to the social media platforms for more updates. So thank you so much, Bernard and Bill, for an insightful and exciting conversation. It was great learning so much about the project and getting up to speed and the innovative work that goes down at DualMint. And that wraps up today's episode of the Web3 Feedback Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. And if you have any feedback or questions, please reach out on social media or send us an email at web3quickbytes@gmail.com. Thanks again to our guests for joining us, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more exciting content, so be sure to subscribe and tune in.